This next piece tells you everything that's wrong with America and many other countries. And it's called the Transition Integrity Project. They wouldn't know integrity if it slapped them in the face. And is a US deep state action group of more than 100 current and former senior government and campaign leaders, academics, journalists, polling experts, and former federal and state government officials. Using colour revolution tactics, it intends to hinder Trump taking power after the 2020 election. Using projection, the project repeatedly states that the whole planning effort is to restrain or counter anti-democratic actions by the Trump administration, whilst itself planning similar practices that depart from traditional rule of law norm. Likewise, media outlets, organisers and campaigns need to develop strategies to both promote accurate reporting with trusted leaders and to interrupt and limit disinformation campaigns, which is seen as only coming from the other side. All part of the game, you see. Now, the initiative was initially convened by Rosa Brooks, a law professor at Georgetown and former Pentagon senior official, and Niles Gilman, a former vice chancellor of the University of California, Berkeley, and historian at Berggruen Institute. Now, she is married to a former lieutenant colonel from the Pentagon, who are also backing her. Brooks is born in and born to. Just saying. Yet again, the same dynamics come forward at such regular occurrences. Brooks, born in and born to. David Blum, another one. The New York Times columnist and member of the initiative, envisages a group of sober people who are militant about America, who can see reality unblinkered by the lens of partisanship and who are finally compelled to organise, wanting to, quote, spur all stakeholders to action. The scenarios being charting out what it would take to stand up a multi-state communications arm to fight disinformation, a training program for non-violent civil disobedience, and the underpinnings of what one official ascribed as mass public unrest. Stakeholders is an interesting term, isn't it? Are they calling us all vampires? Now, these scenarios concentrate on what the Democrats see as their two biggest weaknesses, but also strengths: voting irregularities or voter fraud. And the scenarios noticeably mentions the Trump campaign condemning fraud in the mail-in ballot process, and the Democrats need to protect this process proceeding. The scenarios also consistently envisage state Democrat officials under different pretexts and select a different and pro-Biden batch of electors to the National Electoral College. Peaceful demonstrations and escalating violence, street demonstrations and how the government reacts to them is seen as crucial. So they're advocating for violence and unrest on the streets. Nice people. In the playing out of street violence, such terms such as false flag and agent provocateur were used by the other side, and as well understood in colour revolution methods. The game-winning strategy was to goad the other side into violence. During 2020, the group executed, nice wording again, a series of 4 crisis planning exercises known as games. stating that the winner may not, and we assess likely will not, be known on election night, as officials counting mail-in ballots. The group, with apparent lack of self-irony, concludes this period of uncertainty provides opportunities for an unscrupulous candidate to cast doubt on the legitimacy of the process and to set up an unprecedented assault on the outcome. This is like Operation Blackout and the COVID simulation games. Now, Game 1 being played out is an ambiguous vote without a clear winner. The game envisages Trump calling into question the validity of mail-in ballots and getting Republican officers in several states to immediately halt further vote counting. On the Democrat side, the Biden campaign declared that victory was imminent and called for every vote to be counted. The team mobilized a network of influential bipartisan elites, elected officials, and retired military officers to speak to the press and denounce any effort to suppress counting the vote. The Biden campaign also called for peaceful rallies, echoing a call to count every vote. The Democrats also turned to state officials using an incident where a batch of presumed pro-Biden votes were destroyed by a rogue individual, which left Trump with a narrow electoral win. The governor of Michigan used this abnormality as justification to send a separate pro-Biden set of electors to D.C. This is the simulation games they're playing out. Game 2, a clear Biden victory. In this scenario, Biden won outright in the Electoral College and also the popular vote. The Biden campaign team emphasized standing up a credible transition process. The Trump campaign sought to hinder this, but the federal government team confirmed that a number of civil servants would seek to enable it, regardless of directions from the White House. Game 3, clear Trump Electoral College win. The third scenario posited a comfortable Electoral College victory for President Trump by 286 to 252, but also a significant popular vote win, 52 to 47, for the former Vice President Biden. The gameplay ended in a constitutional crisis characterized by 1. Political chaos, 2. Widespread threats of violence, a sporadic actual violence in the streets, a hostile, dangerous, highly partisan and frequently unconstrained information and media environment. The Biden campaign proposes a series of presumably immediately effective constitutional changes, including abolishing the Electoral College, changing the Supreme Court composition by retiring judges over 70, creating new states, changes which would give Biden the presidency. The game envisages the Biden campaign encouraging Western states, particularly California, but also Oregon and Washington, all the same states that are on fire because of Antifa and BLM, just saying, to secede from the Union unless congressional Republicans agreed to these structural reforms. Game 4, narrow Biden win. The final scenario explored a narrow Biden win where he leads with less than 1% of the popular vote the day after the election and is predicted to win 278 electoral votes, concluding with an uneasy and combative but ultimately successful transition. Now, this scenario envisages Trump being escorted out of the White House on January the 20th, 2021 by the Secret Service while continuing to launch attacks against the legitimacy of the election. Yet again, these think tank psychopaths, with little regard to or for the people, playing boardroom simulation games to essentially be or chose the leader of a criminal network. But should the Justice Departments actually think of we the people for once? Here is something as a reminder of your own rules. Title 18 US Code 2385. Whoever knowingly or willfully advocates, abets, advises, or teaches the duty, necessity, desirability, or propriety of overthrowing or destroying the government of the United States or the government of any state, territory, district, or possession thereof, or the government of any political subdivision therein by force or violence, or by the assassination of any officer of any such government, or whoever with intent to cause the overthrow or destruction of any such government, prints, publishes, edits, issues, circulates, sells, distributes, or publicly displays any written or printed matter advocating, advising, or teaching the duty, necessity, desirability, or propriety of overthrowing or destroying any government in the United States by force or violence, or attempts to do so, or whoever organizes or helps or attempts to organize any society, group, or assembly of persons who teach, advocate, or encourage the overthrow or destruction of any such government by force or violence, or becomes or is a member of or affiliates with any such society, group, or assembly of persons knowing the purposes thereof, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 20 years or both, and shall be ineligible for employment by the United States or any department or agency thereof for the 5 years next following his or her conviction. That whole piece is how and why we have to build the People's Club for and by the people.